Hello viewers, my name is Mrs. Zingisa Goloka from Ebenezer Majombozi High School and HOD for Life Sciences. Welcome to Eastern Cape Department of Education broadcast studio. Today's lesson is about plant response to the environment. Before we look at this topic, we need to look at the exam guidelines. What is it that as learners we need to look at and study when we prepare for this particular topic? One, we need to know the plant hormones which are involved in the response of plants to the environment, which are the auxins, gibberellins, abscisic acid. We just not need to know these hormones only, we also need to know their functions. That is the functions of auxins, functions of gibberellins, functions of abscisic acid. We also need to know the control of weeds using plant hormones, as well as the role of auxins in tropisms, that is phototropism, as well as geotropism. And lastly, we need to know the plant defense mechanism, that is the role of the following plant defense mechanism, that is the chemical, as well as thorns in what we refer to as plant defense mechanism. The key terminology that we need to look at as we deal with this topic, we need to look at what a hormone is. Remember, from our human response to the environment, we dealt with hormones specifically on the topic on the endocrine system, where we defined hormones as chemical messengers that are produced from one part of an organism but will have an effect on the other part of the organism. And the example that I normally give to learners is that of the pituitary gland, which normally produce pituitary hormones like your FSH as well as your LH. But the area in which they work in the ovaries, which means they are produced into one part of the organism, but will have an effect on the other part. But the difference with the hormones in plants, they work in the area where they are produced. So even though we call them hormones, these particular types of hormones in plants, they do not work on the other part where they are not produced. They work in the area in which they are produced. Hence, we refer to them as growth substances rather than as being hormones. So we need to know what hormones are. Also, we need to be familiar with the terminology like tropism. When we refer to tropism, remember the topic is about growth response of plants to the environment. And the only way that plants respond to the environment is showing their growth. That is the types of movement. And usually, when plants grow, they grow towards a particular stimulus. When plants grow towards a particular stimulus, we refer to that as tropism. So it's one of the terms that we need to know. And we know that the tropisms that we are supposed to be looking at as per the exam guideline are two tropism, phototropism, as well as geotropism. Remember, once we refer to tropism, we refer to growth movement of plants towards a particular stimulus. But the minute we become specific, now we say that these plants are growing because they are influenced by a particular stimulus. In this case, light, then it begins to be phototropism. We don't generalize now when we are relating to this particular terminology. So phototropism is the growth response of a plant towards the stimulus of light. Then geotropism, it is also another growth response of plant that we need to know. But in this case, the stimulus is gravity. So we must be able to differentiate between these two. Phototropism, the stimulus in this case is light. But when it comes to geotropism, the stimulus in this case is gravity. So we need to be very much careful about that when we deal with this topic. Then also another terminology that will be coming across as we go through this lesson is that of unilateral light. When we speak of unilateral light, we speak of light that is coming only from one direction. Remember, when light strikes the plants, it is coming from above. and therefore it is striking the plant in all direction. But when light is coming only from one direction, then we refer to that type of light as being unilateral light. So learners should be able to identify when light is coming from one direction, and we refer to that as unilateral light. But if light is coming from above, it means it will strike that plant in all directions, not from one direction. But if it is coming from one direction, that is unilateral. Uni means one. Lateral, side. It means it's coming from one side. Then another thing that we need to look at is herbicides. We also need to know that there are certain substances that are used by farmers to kill unwanted plants. When we plow our crops, let's say, for example, maize, there will be such plants that are not wanted, which we refer to them as weeds. So we need to kill those. We need to kill those particular plants, and we use what we refer to as herbicides. They are herbs, and they are killed by what? By herbicides. Herbicide, side is to kill, herb is just a herb, just like a plant. So we are using these herbicides, to kill these unwanted plants, which we refer to them as weeds. Also, we need to look at what we refer to as apical dominance. Remember, when plants grow, they normally grow vertically up, which usually shows that plants, the way they grow, the vertical growth becomes dominant than the lateral growth. So learners need to know that when auxins, because auxins by themselves are concentrated at the areas that we refer to them as the tips of the plant. This is the tip of the stem. So which means now, if auxins are concentrated at the tip, then they will cause growth in this area and will cause growth of this plant in a vertical position. So as the plant grows upwards, the length grows more than the lateral sides. Then we refer to that as apical dominance. So the learners need to understand that. Learners need also to know the apical bud, because apical buds is the areas where the auxins are normally concentrated. If we look at this diagram that I have here in front of me, I've got the shoot of the apical meristem on the left and the shoot of the root meristem on the right. Then the tip part of the stem, the growing point, it is where your auxins will be located, or where your auxins are situated, or where they are produced. So auxins in a plant, in a stem, are located in this area, and this area we refer to it as an apical bud or an apical meristem, where auxins are highly concentrated. In a root, your auxins will be highly concentrated in this area, which is the area of which we refer to it as the growing point of a what? Of a root. So the auxins themselves are produced at the apical meristems of the stem, as well as the apical meristem of the what? Of the root. If we look at this plant on the right-hand side here, we have got a fully fledged plant here. So auxins will be located in this area in this plant, but in a root, they will be located in the growing tip of the root. So learners need to know the location of auxins. And remember, we have said that hormones, they work where they are located or where they are highly concentrated, more especially in stems. Then we have said that one of the things that we need to know is the function of these hormones. Then we'll start with the auxins. We already know the location of auxins. We have said that auxins are located at the tip of the stem as well as the tip of the what? Of the root. Then let us look now at the functions of the auxins. Auxins, one of their functions is they do what we refer to as a bending reaction in plants. Remember, I have said initially, when plants respond to the environment, they usually respond by showing their growth response towards that particular stimulus. In this case, the plant grows by bending towards that. So one of the functions of your auxin, it is to stimulate bending reactions or growth movement of a plant towards a particular stimulus. Here we've got examples of two tropism, as we have already indicated that we have got phototropism as well as geotropism as part of the examples of tropisms that we have to learn in grade 12. If we look at the example on the left here, you will find out that we've got a lamp here with an arrow which shows that there is a light stimulus If you look at this plant, you will find out that this plant is bending towards this light stimulus. So therefore, the growth response of this plant is growing towards this stimulus. So auxins influence the growth response of this plant towards what? Towards the tropism that we refer to it as phototropism. We'll get into this later in the lesson. On the right-hand side, you will find out that the very same stem now is put horizontally on the ground. It is not influenced by light in this case. It is influenced by the force of gravity. And therefore, this plant will move away from gravity. We'll talk about that when we deal with this area in this lesson. But if you can look at this, you will find out that in tropism, they can either be positive or can either be negative. If we look at the first example here, plants are growing positively towards the stimulus of light. And therefore, we are saying that this type of tropism that is happening here, it is positive phototropism, because this plant is growing positively towards the stimulus of what? Of light. But if we look at this one on the left-hand side, this plant is put horizontally on the ground and it is attracted by the force of gravity, but is moving away from gravity. Then if we look at this stem, we can't say that this stem is positively geotrophic, because in this case, it is moving away from the stimulus of what? Of gravity. So the stems are negatively geotropic, but they are positively phototrophic. Then also on the functions of auxins. Another functions of auxins is to promote cell division. Remember, we have said that auxins are plant growth substances. In other words, they promote growth in plants. So one of the ways in which they promote growth, it is through cell division. You will understand that from grade 10, when we did cell division, we said that a cell will divide and form up two cells, especially during the type of cell division that we refer to as mitosis. And one of the significance of mitosis, it is the growth of what? Of them plants. Then if you look at this cell here, it has undergone cell division and has produced two cells. So there has been an increase in the number of cells. So an increase in the number of cells will promote growth in the plant. So auxins influence cell division and therefore promote growth in what? In plants. Also, we understand that before cell division, the plant has to mature. As it matures, it elongates and reaches a stage of maturity. If you're looking at this plant, here this plant is elongating like this, and it is now long enough and is ready to undergo cell division. So auxins are responsible also for cell elongation. As the cell elongates, it means it's increasing in size. Its increase in size is promoting growth in that particular plant. So auxins influence growth in a plant through promoting cell division as well as promoting what we refer to as cell elongation. And thirdly, auxins, they promote what we refer to as apical dominance. Remember, we have said that auxins are produced at the apical meristem of the stems as well as the apical meristem of the what? Of the roots. So therefore, they will promote growth, what we refer to as apical dominance. So the plant will tend to grow in the apical areas than on the lateral areas. Let's say, for example, here, we do have this plant here too, that is growing here. If you look at this plant here, it's showing what we refer to as apical dominance. If you look at this plant, it's growing vertically up, and the length of this plant looks longer vertically than it is on the lateral side. It is because auxins are produced at this area, that is in the apical area of this plant, and therefore growth is promoted in this side. Hence, this plant is growing vertically up like this. But if you look at this plant on the other side here, you will find out that here the auxins have been eliminated. The apical shoot has been cut off, and therefore the influence of auxins have been inhibited there. Then it means this plant now will not grow vertically, but it will begin to grow in lateral buds, which is showing that really the presence of auxins promote what we refer to as apical dominance. So it is important that we understand that auxins, because they are concentrated at the tip of the stem. They promote growth where they are highly concentrated. And as such, they end up causing what? Vertical growth in plant and limit growth on the sides of the what? Of the plant. We refer to that as apical dominance. It means the apical area is dominating growth in that particular plant. Then we look at the second type of hormones which are referred to as gibberellins. Each gibberellins, one of their functions, remember we need to know the hormones and also we know them functions of these hormones. Each gibberellins, their function, they cause growth or elongation of stem in the internodes. You will understand that from your grade 10 work, when you look at the structure of the plant, when the plant grows, you will find out that the plant develops from the stem, your leaves at the places that are known as the nodes, and then the leaves will develop at the nodes of the what? Of the stems. Let's say here is another plant here to here, developing at the place that we refer to as nodes. Then the space between the nodes, we refer to it as internodes. So the function of gibberellins is to cause growth in this particular area, then causing the stem now to elongate. If we look at this man on this side here, you will find that these stems are elongating upward because the internodes, the spaces in between the leaves, between the nodes itself, have been elongated due to the presence of what? Of gibberellins. So the gibberellins are responsible for promoting growth or elongating stems between the internodes. Internodes are the spaces between the what? The nodes. They also stimulate the growth of the what? Of the root. Also, auxins, they also promote what we refer to as seed development. When seeds develop or when seeds are put on the shelf, they can stay for longer years without developing. But the minute you put the seed under the ground or you put water on the seed, then the seed begins to germinate and develops its pumule as well as its radicle. If we look here on this side here, you will find out that we do have the seed here of a peach plant beginning to show what? Its germination, which means now in this seed there is an increase of gibberellins, which is causing this seed to germinate so that it can germinate into a tree, which is a peach plant to payam. On the other side, these hormones, which are known as gibberellins, are also responsible for developing flowers in our plants. If you look at this one, you will find that peach trees, during the season of spring, they will begin to bloom and show up those beautiful purple colors. So the hormone that is responsible for the development of those flowers, it is the hormone that we refer to it as gibberellins. Also, gibberellins are responsible for making our fruits bigger. If farmers need to make their fruit bigger than the normal fruit that will grow in our backyard gardens, they will spray gibberellins so that we get bigger fruit. If you go to Woolworths, you go to Spar, you will find out the size of the fruit there is different from the size of the fruit that grows in our back gardens because they have been sprayed with what? With gibberellins. They make those fruit bigger in terms of size. And then we go to the third hormone, which is abscisic acid, which is also important as part of the hormones that we need to know. Then this hormone, its function is to close its stomata in times of drought, therefore reducing water loss by transpiration. You will remember in grade 10, we taught about the structure of the leaf, and we have said that the leaf has got the upper epidermis and the lower epidermis, and the epidermal cells on the lower sides are modified into guard cells. And in between each guard cell, there is this opening that we refer to it as the stoma. So therefore, the leaves usually open so that they can lose water through the process that we refer to as transpiration. Then in order to reduce that during drought, the leaves have to close their stomata so that they don't lose water too much to the outside, and as such they don't dry up or they don't wilt up until they die. So in a way, abscisic acid is protecting the plant against drought by making sure that the stomata are closed during its drought season so that the plant does not lose too much water to the outside. This is one of the functions of the abscisic acid. Then another function of the abscisic acid, it slows down in germinations. Remember, I have said that if you put your bean seed in your cupboard or in the stores there at Spam, it can stay for years without germinating. When it is not germinating, it means growth is delayed there. We say that the seed is dormant. If we look at this peach plant, without this peach plant going underground or getting water there, it will not germinate. So at this point, this seed is dormant. It is not germinating. So therefore, the reason why it is not germinating, it is because this seed is controlled by what we refer to as abscisic acid. There is a concentration of abscisic acid in this particular seed that is causing it not to germinate. Also, it causes dormancy of apical buds so that the plants do not grow too much, especially when they are losing too much water during that time. So it's also doing that, it causing dormancy of buds, that is your apical buds, in your roots as well as in your stem. It is also responsible for onset of flowering in some plants, even though gibberellins are also responsible for that. This one is responsible for the onset of flowerings in plants. It is also responsible for aging of leaves. In other words, it promotes the aging of leaves. The aging of leaves is referred to as abscission. We call it abscission. So when the leaves fall off, you will understand that during winter, especially in the example that I've come with here, that of peaches, you will find out they usually lose their leaves during winter. And therefore, we refer to that falling of leaves or abscission of what? Of leaves. So the hormone that is responsible for the abscission of leaves, it is what we refer to as abscisic acid. It is not only responsible for the falling of leaves. You will find out that when the fruit is ready, when the fruit is ripe, it normally falls on the ground. We say that the fruit has fallen off the ground. So the abscission of leaves as well as the abscission of ripe fruit is caused by abscisic acid. Then also e-hormones are used as weed killers. Remember, we have said that we use herbicides. Sometimes farmers will use chemicals in order to kill those herbs. But the disadvantage of herbs is that they are poisonous. They might be poisonous to plants that we eat and end up being poisonous to us. So farmers have come up, or scientists have come up now with a new way of killing weeds. We're using what? The hormones. Then the weed killers that are used by farmers are auxin-based. And the way that they kill those weeds is kind of like focused on a particular weed. In other words, they do not kill everything that is in your garden or in your field. In other words, these auxin-based chemicals, they only focus or only kill the weeds that are targeting. In other words, in some cases, you will find out that they only kill those that have got broad weeds. Let's say, for example, you have been plowing your maize plant, and then you have got this weed that is affecting you, that is broad, with broad leaves. And then you begin to have your herbicides that are auxin-based, and you begin to spray them. So your auxin-based herbicide will not kill your crop, that is your maize, but will kill only the weeds. And therefore, it will help you to reduce the amount of weeds that are in your plant, and in a very organic way than the way that could be poisonous to both plants as well as to human beings. So auxins are used for controlling weeds, more especially the auxins. The gibberellins have got their own functions. Abscisic acid, we look at it. We also looked at the function of the auxins in general. Then let us look now at what happens when these plants are sprayed with these auxin-based chemicals or weed killers. Look at this plant that we have here on this side. If you can see this plant, the leaves now have been distorted. They have been deformed. They end up having swollen stems, and therefore, sometimes they even have some things that are called galls on plants, and then this will ultimately die. And therefore, this is a way that you are controlling your what? Your weeds in your plant. And in a way, you're protecting your plants against the weeds, because the weeds themselves will compete with your plants by eating the same nutrients that are needed by your plants, the same water that is needed by your plants. So in order to control them in a better way that is not going to be bad for the environment, you use auxin-based herbicides. Then we come back to the topic that we talked about earlier on tropism. Remember, we have said that when we speak of tropism, we speak of growth movement of a plant towards a particular stimulus. But the minute now we say that this particular plant is growing towards a particular stimulus because it is stimulated by light, we begin to say that this type of tropism is known as phototropism. So auxins are influencing those tropism. Remember, we said that one of the function of auxins, it is to influence what we refer to as tropism in plants. So auxins can influence phototropism. It can also influence geotropism. Remember, we said geotropism is the growth of a plant towards the stimulus of gravity. So for that plant to respond to the stimulus of gravity, it is influenced by auxins. Let us see now how auxins influence these two types of tropism. Here we have got plants that I have in front of me. These are that is the types of tropism that we talk about is geotropism as well as phototropism. Let us look at the first plant on my left-hand side. Remember, we have said here we have got two types of tropism, geotropism and phototropism. Let's understand that when we speak of tropism, it is the growth of a plant towards a particular stimulus. But once we become specific, the plant is growing towards the stimulus of light, then it means it's phototropism. Let us look at the first plant that we have here on the left-hand side. You will find out that we have said earlier on, auxins are located at the tip of the what? Of the stem. So therefore, in this particular plant, the auxins will move down this plant. As the auxins are moving down this plant, they become evenly distributed. In other words, they will be equally distributed in this plant. So if auxins are equally distributed in this stem, then it means no part of this stem does not have what? Auxins. And this will promote equal growth in this stem and causing this stem to grow upward like that. But if we look at this plant in the middle, now we have got light that is coming from one side. Remember, we have said when light is coming from one side, we refer to that as unilateral light. So in this case, when light is coming from one side, it will cause these auxins to go to this side where there is no light. In other words, the auxins will move to the area where there is no light. Probably auxins are sensitive to light. Remember, we have said that the function of auxins, its stems, is to promote growth. So therefore, if auxins now are more on this side, this simply means that there is uneven distribution. Unlike the first one, where the auxins were equally distributed, here auxins are concentrated only on one side of this plant, which is the side that is not exposed to what? To light. So therefore, growth will be promoted on the side where there is high concentration of auxins in a what? In a stem. Since growth is promoted on this side, we begin to see this plant now being elongated and growing faster on this side where there is a high concentration of auxins. If we look at this plant, you'll see this plant now, because it is growing from this side, then it is bending now, bending towards the stimulus of what? Of light. So in this case, for this plant to bend towards the stimulus of light, it has been influenced by the presence of what? Of auxins. So in this case, auxins had an influence on the type of tropism that we refer to it as phototropism. Let's go back. We say that under normal circumstances, when light is coming in all directions, auxins have a tendency of moving down the plant. As the auxins are moving down, they get evenly distributed. When they are evenly distributed, it means all the parts of the stem and the plant will be getting what? Auxins. And therefore, it will promote growth equally in the plant. Thus, the plant will be growing upwards towards the stimulus of light. As you can see that the light is coming from the upside here. But in the plant in the middle now, there has been a change. Light is coming from the side of this plant. So there is one directional side of this light that is coming. Remember, we have said that when light is coming from one side, we refer to that as unilateral light. So therefore, when light is coming from one side, then it will cause the auxins to move to the other side. When auxins move to the other side, then it means now there is unequal distribution of what? Of auxins in this particular stem. So there is high concentration of auxins on this side where there is no light, and therefore growth will be promoted on this side. Cell elongation will occur on this side. And as such, because the plant is elongated on this side and it's not growing on this side where it is exposed to light, then it will tend to bend and bending towards the stimulus of light. So therefore, it means it is what we refer to as phototropism. Okay, still on phototropism, let's look at the plant here on this side that we have here in this plant. We've got a plant that has been put in a box here. It's an experiment. And the plant that has been put in another box, but a hole has been opened in both of these plants, Zetupaya. Then if you look at this plant, Zetupaya, light is coming from one side. And because light has been coming from one side from this plant, then auxins moved to this side where there is no light, causing growth of a plant on the side where there is more auxins, and causing this plant here to grow towards the stimulus of light. Then we refer to this as an influence of auxin on phototropism, or the role of auxins on phototropism. So which means auxins are influencing the way plants will respond to that particular stimulus. In this case, they will influence the way they respond to them to the light stimulus in this case. Then this is what I've just explained earlier on. If you look at this is under normal light conditions. Light is the stem itself is exposed to light from all positions, and as such, auxins will move down. If you see these arrows, they are showing light moving down here, and as they are moving down, the plant gets equal distribution of what? Of auxins, and then the stem will grow upward. But in this one on the left, you see that light is coming only from one direction. Because light is coming from one direction, then auxins will move to this side of the plant where there is no light, and then causing this stem to bend towards the stimulus of light. I hope that is clear as far as the role of auxins in phototropism. Remember, we have said that the auxins are responsible for tropisms in plants. One is phototropism and the other one is geotropism. Let us focus now on how auxins influence geotropism. Remember, geotropism is the growth of a plant towards the stimulus of gravity. In this case, the stimulus is gravity, not light. Let us look now at the two shoots that we have here. Let's begin under normal circumstances. What will happen under normal circumstances? You will find out that under normal circumstances, the auxins, we have said that they are located at the growing tip of the what? Of the root. Then what will happen is that the auxins will move upward. As they move upward, they become evenly distributed throughout the root, and they will cause even growth in a root, and causing your root to grow downwards, because there is no space in the root that is not having auxins. But when the roots are put horizontally on the ground, what will happen? The auxins will move to the lower side of your shoot. These are two shoots here. The shoot having the root side as well as your stem side here. So auxins here will move to the lower side of this plant that I have here. Auxins will be moving to the lower side. So which means therefore that there will be high concentration of auxins on the lower side than it is on the upper side. Then what will happen to the root then? Let's say, for example, here is my root being put horizontally and auxins moving to the lower side, which means now there is a high concentration of auxins on the lower side than it is on the upper side. What is going to happen here? Auxins in a root, they inhibit growth, which is an opposite effect as it is on stems. Remember, in stems, they promote growth, but in roots, they do what? They inhibit growth. So which means because there is high concentration of auxins on the lower side of the root, here, this root will not grow on this side, but your growth will be promoted from this side. As the root is growing from this side is not growing, then it causes a bending reaction of this root to grow downwards, because now the side that is growing here is the upper side, not the lower side. So we must understand that, learners, in roots, auxins have got an opposite function. They inhibit what? Growth in roots. Once there is high concentration of auxins in roots, then they will inhibit growth. So there will be no growth on the lower side, but the plant will still, or the root will still grow on the upper side. But because it's growing more on the upper side, then it will cause a bending reaction, causing this root now to grow downwards. But now if you concentrate on the whole plant as it is displayed here, we have said that this whole plant is put horizontally on the ground, and therefore the auxins will move to the lower side of this plant. So which means we have high concentration of auxins on the lower side of this plant. On this side of the root, that is where auxins are concentrated, the root will not grow from this side, but it will grow from this side, which will cause now this bending reaction that we see from this part of the plant that is on my right hand side here, because auxins in a root, they inhibit what? Growth. But this side that is not having auxins will keep on growing, thus causing this root to bend downwards towards the ground. But on the side of the shoot or on the side of the stem, same thing has happened. Auxins have gone to the lower side of the what? Of the shoot or of the stem. Then in this case, since they have got an opposite effect, once there is a concentration of auxins on the lower side of the shoot, they will cause growth to be faster on the lower side than on the upper side. And therefore, this stem will grow faster on this side than on this side, thus causing this stem to bend upwards. If we can see this plant, it is bending like this on this side and bending like this on this side. So which means therefore that it has got an opposite effect on the root. On the root, it inhibits growth. On the shoot, it promotes growth. Hence, this plant is growing downwards, and on this one, it is growing upwards. Then we look at the last subtopic of this topic, which is plant response on the environment, which we refer to as plant defense mechanism. Plants have got a way of defending themselves. In other words, they've got a way of protecting themselves, more especially from herbivores. Remember, plants are eaten by herbivores, and they are also protecting themselves against pathogens. How do they do this? Some plants, you'll find out that they normally develop thorns. And these thorns that develop in plants, they help the plants to protect them from being eaten by herbivores. No herbivore will go to a plant that he knows that when it comes closer to it, it will be picked by those thorns. So that's a way of protecting itself from that particular herbivore. Or those plants may release some certain chemicals. When you come to those plants, you find a bad smell. And then you find out that if I come close to this particular plant, it is giving me this dizzy headache. And therefore, let me avoid this particular plant by not picking it. Therefore, the plant defend themselves by producing certain chemicals which repel the herbivores from them, or repels the pathogens from them, or they are avoided by them from eating them. So from the right-hand side, you can see that here we've got the acacia tree. This acacia tree has got thorns in it. So no herbivore will try and come. They might come and eat those leaves, but when they come there, they will be picked by those leaves. And therefore, this plant will be avoided by what? By the herbivores. So this is the way the plants defend themselves from being eaten by the herbivores. It's either they will have thorns or they will produce chemicals that are poisonous to those organisms, or that will kill the bacteria or the fungi that will affect them, or the chemicals that will produce a bad smell so that I don't come closer to that particular plant. Remember, we need to know the functions of the hormones, the role of auxins in tropisms. We also need to know the defense mechanism that the plants do in order to protect themselves against pathogens or against herbivores. I thank you. We have now come to the end of our lesson. You can leave your questions on the comment section. Don't forget to leave your name of your school so that you can give shout outs. Please recommend and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Thank you for watching. See you on the next lesson.